From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Voters in Cuba have approved the country's new constitution. Election officials say the new constitution was approved with over 85% support, with only 9% of voters voting against it. On Sunday, over 7 million people cast their ballots out of 8 million registered voters.
A total of 6,816,169 people voted yes. This represents 86.85% of the 7,848,343 people who voted in total. So, according to the Article 137 of the current Constitution, the new Cuban Constitution has been approved during the referendum on February 24th by a majority of the citizens with the right to vote.
Moving on, the United States has announced new sanctions against Venezuela's government. The U.S. Treasury Department imposed the penalties on 4 state governors allied with the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro. 3 of the governors oversee some of the biggest ports in the country. The U.S. sanctions already in place have cost the country and its people tens of billions of dollars. This comes after the meeting between the U.S. and its allies in the Lima Group. Venezuelan opposition lawmaker and self-proclaimed interim president Juan Guaidó joined U.S. Vice President Mike Pence for the meeting. While most of Lima Group continues to oppose military action, Pence warned that the United States will stand by its close ally Colombia, and he called for more diplomatic isolation of Venezuela.
The United States calls on every freedom-loving nation in this hemisphere, including Mexico, Uruguay, and the nations of the Eastern Caribbean, to join with us in recognizing interim President Juan Guaidó and his government, and join us by stepping forward to support the Venezuelan people's struggle to reclaim their libertad.
Costa Rica and Mexico stayed away from the Lima Group meeting, and both countries called for a peaceful solution to the political situation in Venezuela.
We think it is very clear that we have to look for a peaceful and negotiated solution to the Venezuelan situation. We are just following what our constitution says. And I said it that many times. An intervention is not possible, and there must be self-determination for the people. This is a topic that creates a lot of polarization. We support the people's will and elections, and we support a peaceful solution.
Following the meeting of the Lima Group on Monday, Brazil's government said it has no intention of allowing the U.S. to use its territory to invade Venezuela. On Twitter, Brazil's vice president said the entrance of foreign troops into our territory depends on the approval of Congress, adding that the government of Jair Bolsonaro has no intention of supporting such a move. And the European Union is once again urging countries to avoid any military intervention in Venezuela.
Contact has been established, but nevertheless the position of the European Union in this context is very clear. We must avoid any military intervention.
During an interview on Democracy Now!, Venezuela's foreign minister criticized the opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó for continuing his support on foreign intervention in the country.
In any case, he's going to meet with his boss, with Mr. Pence, and he's going to ask Mr. Pence for a military intervention in Venezuela. He already said it, it's sad, but it's also insane. You cannot believe or tell the people that you are the president, so-called president of your country, and ask for a foreign intervention against your people, against your family, against your friends. No, because bombs will not differentiate who's Chavista and who's not Chavista. So I believe I can almost not believe when I hear these people calling for these things.
Both the U.S. Vice President and leaders of the Lima Group, along with much of the world's media, accused the Venezuelan government of burning aid trucks and attacking their own people. But our correspondent Alejandro Kirk was on the Colombian border and reports what really happened at the weekend was somewhat different.
The Simón Bolívar Bridge between Venezuela and Colombia. Along with the Santander Bridge at Oreña, it's one of two main border crossings. Both were chosen as sites for an epic day, a sort of checkmate against the Bolivarian Revolution in just one day, thanks to the miraculous humanitarian aid from the United States. Right at the start of the day, a false flag operation would be an excellent way to start the coup d'etat. A spectacular escape by Venezuelan soldiers in armoured cars to trigger a mass desertion. But it ended badly. It began a humanitarian day with an act of terror. From there, it continued downhill. On the Santander Bridge, the remains of two trucks supposedly carrying the famous boxes of aid. One was set on fire, the other pillaged. The next day, the Colombian president knew exactly who was responsible.
They burned food and medicine. This is a barbarian act, clearly in violation of international law. I think the international community saw much more clearly yesterday what Venezuelans have been suffering for years.
Of course, it couldn't be these cheery volunteers who were to blame. They just happened to be preparing and throwing dozens of Molotov cocktails that set the same truck alight over and over again. They were the picture of love and solidarity. Clearly, the plan failed. Neither the trucks nor the liberators crossed into Venezuela. But for more than 12 hours, the bridge was no man's land, with none of the usual customs or immigration officials to be seen. Only one person could be to blame.
It is Maduro who has caused this. He is the only one responsible.
Maduro must have been to blame too for what happened on the Simón Bolívar Bridge throughout Saturday morning. Venezuelan opposition supporters spent hours in face-to-face exchanges with the Bolivarian police's front line of defense. They told them about their suffering mothers and children and the fires of hell that awaited them at the International Criminal Court. Maybe they were hoping for a Hollywood finale where the troops dropped their arms and embraced their foes. Since that didn't happen, the opposition lawmaker, José Olivares, in charge of the operation, took the bull by the horns. With the air of a man who knows what's needed, surrounded by his lieutenants, he led a small march straight towards the cordon of young policemen and women, a call for harmony laden with threats.
Behind us are thousands of people, but above all trucks loaded with aid. The only thing I can tell you, for certain, with all the respect and affection of a fellow Venezuelan, is that we are determined to get through. We will pass.
At 9:30, we are going to organize a human chain to carry the humanitarian aid into Venezuela. The first line is made up of Bolivarian police. They're not the army or the National Guard, so they know we are going to get through with the aid.
After that, Olivares disappeared, along with his lieutenants in blue jackets with emblems in English. Back came the poor foot soldiers. It was time. The young police officers didn't drop their shields, and a single tear gas bomb sent the protesters running. The calls for love and peace turned into stones and Molotov cocktails for several hours. The Colombian police always willing to lend a hand. On the Venezuelan side, civilians and police joined in a combined defense, with the music of Ali Primera in the background. The day ended with lawmaker Olivares on the back of a truck, more humble now, ordering a retreat. The epic had come to an end.
The battle isn't worth it anymore. We need to look after our boys, take care of our people, and speak to them.
Dawn broke on Sunday with the bridges occupied by police. Venezuela had broken off diplomatic relations with Colombia. The border was closed on both sides. Did this mean peace? On the bridges, yes. But beneath, it was still no man's land, where Duque's protégés knew exactly what they wanted.
As soon as our guys get through and they start seizing the Venezuelan soldiers' weapons, they have to kill the soldiers. We cannot continue just throwing stones at them. They have to understand what the mission is about, and they have to hand the weapons to the new government. They must not lose those weapons.
North Americans, Brazilians, Colombians, we need an army to help us there in Venezuela. They have to liquidate the armed forces. It will be 2 or 3 days of war, but then we will be done with it.
If the warnings of war come true, these will not be the soldiers in the next battle for Venezuela's independence and sovereignty.
We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. Victims of the Vale Dam mine collapse in Brazil held a memorial 1 month after the tragedy, showing pictures of their lost family members and banners against mine company Vale. Hundreds of residents of Brumadinho in Minas Gerais rallied to pay tribute to victims. Over 170 people died in the disaster, with over 130 still missing.
I feel pain, longing, and a lot of disgust. A very deep disgust, knowing that it could have been prevented. It happened because they willingly decided that money was more important.
At least 50 people have been killed in heavy rainfall in Peru, and thousands more have been affected. Flooding and landslides have also left serious material damages.
Just as people in northern Peru await reparations for damages caused by El Niño weather phenomena 2 years ago, a new wave of heavy rains have taken local residents by surprise in Piura, where the ceiling of a hospital has collapsed.
We must declare an emergency. It is an emergency for us. If this can happen from rain, imagine what will happen if the rain continues through the summer and all the sickness that will arise.
The situation for Peruvians is getting worse. In Piura, around 1,000 families are living in shelters or in uninhabitable houses, and around 3,000 are living in temporary housing since 2017, according to politician Hernando Ceballos.
Putting people in a house isn't enough. I have to ensure that these families have some water supply, healthcare, and jobs. Because how are they going to live otherwise? The problem hasn't been solved yet. Families are still living in poor conditions. Many of them even have to ask for help from international organizations.
According to Hernando Ceballos, only about 22% of the $7,500 billion that the government allocated for reconstruction after El Niño in 2017 has been used.
Have we found a way for water to keep running efficiently? No. Have we resolved the dam issues in the Piura River to prevent flooding? No, we haven't. So it's very worrying that 2 years later we'll still have people at risk.
The National Service for Meteorology and Hydrology in Peru warns that heavy rains will cause flooding and it will continue across the country for now.
Guyana's government is pressing the Vzla bauxite company to reinstate 61 dismissed workers by this week. The employees were sent home over their decision to strike over a 1% increase in their salary. Minister of Natural Resources Rafael Trotman is urging the company to respect local labor laws and also recognize the representing union. The African, Caribbean, and Pacific group of states is calling on Haitian police to exercise maximum restraint in responding to any provocation by protesters. In a statement, ACP Secretary General Dr. Patrick Gomez condemns the perpetration of the violence and loss of life. The diplomat is urging all parties to refrain from any further action that could exacerbate the situation.
And that is why we gave a slogan.
In Jamaica, after opposition senators walk out of the Senate, the bill that will lead to the government's repurchase of the 49% stake in Petrojam was approved. Leader of the government business in the Senate, Kamina Johnson-Smith, explained why this action is important.
We, like many other countries, rely on a vast supply of energy in order to keep everything going, literally everything, to fuel our homes, our businesses, buses, taxis, communication, factories, businesses, our hospitals, healthcare centers. The ability to flick a switch and have the light come on. This is the importance of Petrojam to Jamaica. They're responsible for approximately 80% of Jamaica's market supply. So if Petrojam is insecure, Jamaica is insecure.
Caribbean countries have been warned that rainfall over the next 3 months may be less than usual in some islands. The Caribbean Met Institute says with weak El Niño conditions forecasted, the chances of drought, heat waves, and recurrent dry spells are increased. And this could spark wildfires. A potential late start to the wet season, particularly in Belize and the southernmost islands, may produce warmer temperatures. While Senegal's Prime Minister has said that incumbent Macky Sall has won re-election as president, the opposition is crying foul. The Prime Minister claimed Sall won in 13 out of 14 regions. However, the opposition has refuted these claims, calling it an attempt to lay the groundwork for an electoral power grab. Full official results are expected on Friday. Nigeria's main opposition party has rejected the results announced by the electoral body, saying they were manipulated. This comes after the Electoral Commission announced current President Muhammadu Buhari to be in the lead. But the People's Democratic Party has accused the Electoral Commission of working in favor of the government.
All results currently being announced by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is incorrect, thus unacceptable to our party and the people. Secondly, officials of both President Buhari's government and All Progressive Congress APC, working with INEC officers, have tried to alter the course of history and disenfranchise our people through the cancellation and manipulation of figures for results already announced at polling units.
South Africa's only power supply company, Eskom, has been battling to keep the lights on. Our correspondent Matuba Malaje looks at some of the reasons why the utility company is struggling.
Corruption and mismanagement have been cited as the major problems facing Eskom, but one of the most famous townships, Soweto, has been named as the biggest debtor to Eskom. Illegal connections and non-payment have cost the power supplier millions of dollars. Another side of Soweto, though, is functioning well and doesn't look trouble at all, especially on this street, the only one in the world that had 2 Nobel laureates as residents, Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. And this is also where journalist Lerato Manzi was born and bred. Soweto's debt has troubled her, and she says there are many layers that complicate Soweto's debt issue, among them migrants who live in precarious conditions.
I mean, we do accept that there are a lot of migrants in many areas of Soweto. However, they are also part of the problem of illegal connections, because you'll have Mama who has shacks in her yard, and with that there'll be illegal connections because she gets rent, right? But there will be illegal connections, you know, connected to her house. But nonetheless, that is not the only problem. We also, as Soweto dwellers, we need to take responsibility of our actions. We really need to stand up and say, look, this is too much. Unfortunately, this is bad publicity for Soweto also. We need to take responsibility and pay and be responsible citizens.
Many argue that the ANC government and its promise for free housing and electricity has made people complacent when it comes to paying for services. But Lorato says it will take the young generation to instill a culture of meeting financial obligations to help the economy grow.
As a young professional from Soweto, I'd really like to urge my peers, to actually spearhead this calling to get our members to start paying for the debt, because it does not only affect us in Soweto, it affects everyone around the country. Load shedding has affected everybody. Everybody has been complaining about load shedding. So if we do not take that responsibility as young professionals, nobody else will. We need to pay the debt. We need to pay and be responsible.
This is probably the most famous street in the world, and Soweto is happy to associate itself with this street, Vilagasi Street, you see behind me. But now Soweto is also carrying a lot of shame because of the debt it has incurred, and now it's putting pressure on the economy of the whole country through the power utility Eskom. I'm Matiwa Mahlachi, Soweto, South Africa.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. Britain's Labour Party has announced it will support a second referendum on Brexit. Leader Jeremy Corbyn said our second referendum will prevent a damaging Tory Brexit being forced on the country. Corbyn will also table an amendment to the government's Brexit motion. It will set out 5 demands to Prime Minister Theresa May as conditions for the Labour Party's support of our Brexit deal, including a permanent customs union.
To protect jobs.
The EU Council President Donald Tusk says an extension to Brexit may be a rational solution. His comments come as there's no majority in the British Parliament to approve a deal by the scheduled exit date of March 29. The British Prime Minister Theresa May is struggling to secure changes to her deal with the EU that will reassure a divided Parliament over the border with Ireland. Meanwhile, the Irish Foreign Minister has said his country won't veto a British request to extend Brexit by 21 months, but he will prefer problems with the current deal to be resolved. The pressure is mounting on Prime Minister May as she risks leaving the EU without a deal. And now it's time to bring you some other stories from around the world.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been criticised by AIPAC, the largest US pro-Israeli lobby, over an election alliance with the far-right party, loyal to the policies of the late anti-Arab rabbi Mir Kahane. Netanyahu engineered the deal between the Jewish power and another ultra-nationalist faction, Jewish Home, on Wednesday. Netanyahu has defended the merger as a way to improve his chances of forming a right-wing governing coalition led by his party to serve for a 5th term in office.
We usually do not interfere in elections. However, in this case, our voice needs to be heard. We care about Israel. We love Israel. Israel is a strong, vibrant democracy, a party which is based on racist, Kahanist values we think should not be a part of the Israeli government. However, we understand that it's up to the elections committee to decide who will be a part of that government or not. We're not intervening, we're merely stating our voice, a voice of the Jewish diaspora, the biggest Jewish diaspora outside of Israel.
The majority of residents in Japan's Okinawa Island have voted against controversial plans to relocate a US military base. But the government says it will continue with its construction plans. 72% of people voted against the relocation of a US air station from one part of the island to another. The non-binding referendum took place on Sunday. The Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said the government takes the result seriously, but it won't abort its plans.
Accidents have taken place here. However, the U.S. forces, even if they break laws or regulations, go unpunished in accordance with the relevant agreements between Japan and the U.S. So I don't think it's fair. Plus, the military base is something related with war. I don't think military bases should exist in the world.
Uzbekistan has launched a 6-figure banknote in a bid to boost big consumer purchases as the country mostly shops in cash. The new note of 100,000 som is worth $11.90 and is being reported as a big step up from the country's 50,000 note. According to a central bank official, it will be easier to buy high-value goods such as cars, furniture and appliances. Salaries in Uzbekistan are often paid in cash.
And we come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telestorenglish.net. And don't forget to join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telestory English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.